Welcome to the Women Leaders Association Daily Member Podcast, where we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland. And in each Daily Member Podcast, we will pick out a great speaker from one of our meetings that we thought you would enjoy. You can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. If you would like to get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or find a networking group near you, or if you just need access to the membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Now let's tune in for this incredible message.
So hello everyone, I am Grace and I moved to San Diego in 2019. After 30 years of being a business advisor, I call myself a truth miner and a people mover. I did this as the head of insights at Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, and HP Inc. HP was the one who brought me here in San Diego. I lived in 6 countries. So the earlier speakers were interesting for me to touch base with and some of the learnings there. I have 3 kids. Each of them born in one of the 3 countries, the different countries that I've lived in. I left HP last May, so also with Maddie, there's a connection there. I left HP last May by choice to focus on finding my fire in my belly again. And I found that fire doing 2 things. So I gave birth to my 2 twins again, which is essentially a freelance e-marketplace, which I would invite any of you who are kind of like looking to do freelance work in the data and market research space. So that's my one baby. My other baby is I also created a new course to help mid-career people like myself, mid-career women who are looking at new opportunities and opening new things for themselves in the coming months in the midst of all of this hullabaloo and things that are happening in the marketplace to women.
Beth, we'll go to you next. Can you please give us a self-introduction?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry, Beth Kaplan. As you can see, I'm a managing director at Deloitte in our controllership practice. I've lived in San Diego for 11 years, having moved from Orange County, where I spent 26 years up there. And if I go all the way back, the roots, or if you hear any slight accent, it is New York. So I won't have to say, I'm not a native Californian. I have, my career is a little sorted. I've been an external auditor, I've been a controller, CFO, and I've been in business consulting, finance transformation for the last 22 years. I sit in a national practice, and I say that because as we talk about balance, I do not have a single client in the Pacific time zone. So I'll put it out there. I have 2 grown children, 2 grandchildren. I've been working for about 40 years, and my adult children survived a working mother of 40 years, and I think each of them is a productive adult. And I haven't seen them on any police monitors or anything like that. So with that, I think I'll pass it on to the next person.
So my name is Ildiko Antal. I am a scientist and a certified project manager. I worked in academia and in the pharmaceutical industry for 40 years. And I just retired last Friday. So I was at Johnson & Johnson at the end of my career for 7 years. And now I am really looking for rewiring my life rather than being retired. I am Hungarian. Originally, I lived in the United States for 37 years. I also have one grown son. He's a graduate student at UCSF, so he also lives in California. And we moved to San Diego from the East Coast about 3.5 years ago, just right before the pandemic. And I live here with my husband and my pandemic dog and 2 cats. So that's about me.
Sure. Okay, we're going to give this another try. Everybody can hear me? We're good? Okay, fabulous.
Yes.
So my name is Courtney Whitmerhouse, and until last week, I was the Director of Talent Acquisition at Scripps Health. And as of Thursday last week, I am the Director of Workforce Planning and Recruitment Strategy at Sharp. I have been in the talent acquisition space for basically my career. We're looking at about 20 years there. I've specialized in healthcare for the last 12 years. So as you can imagine, the last 3 years have been the wildest roller coaster in terms of challenges and wins and just trying to get new things going. I have 2 small children. I know everybody's talking about their grown adult children. I wrangle a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old every day. So I can definitely speak to the work-life balance piece of being a leader and having those tiny humans running around that just need so much of you. So I'm excited to talk on this panel.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. Super happy to be here. I had the joy and pleasure of working in healthcare for 39 years. I'm a native Californian. I worked most recently with Sharp Healthcare. I was System Director of Revenue Cycle Services, Hospital Access Services for 5+ years, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful place to work. I retired in February, and prior to my retirement, I knew I wanted to kind of have a plan and a map for where I was going next. And I am a volunteer for the city of Poway. I'm a docent for the Kuimai Center, as well as the Blue Sky Ecological Reserve. I joined several networking groups just yesterday. It was in Encinitas, a professional retiree group for 65 to 75. I'm a little young for the group, but super excited to connect with them and learn about what they're doing. So if anybody's interested and you go to Meetup, join that group. Very exciting group to be part of. So excited to talk about work-life balance. It's super important as we move forward in our discussion and panel. Thanks.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for being with us today. So we're just going to dive right into our questions. So for our first question, Grace, we're going to start with you and follow up with you, Ildiko and Courtney. Grace, what is your definition of work-life balance, and what does the ideal balancing act look and feel like to you?
Well, for me, I think work-life balance is really just balance, and it's not balancing just work and life. I think about my life as like 4 components at very least: mind, heart, body, soul, or maybe more specifically, it's work, relationships, health, and play. So those aspects, I think, need to kind of like be balanced. If you think about a circle, I kind of like once in a while look at that circle and see, do I have a dent somewhere? And the objective is really at any point in time when I look at my life, those 4 aspects are, closer to the edges. Like I'm positive, I'm like rating 5, let's say, in my work. I'm feeling really good about my relationships. Feeling most of the time I feel really bad and not quite there in terms of my health. And also most of the time I don't feel really good about where I'm putting time for hobbies and things that kind of like make me happy, like play and spending time with family. So kind of like see it as a circle, I guess. When you're balanced, you're kind of like complete all aspects of your life.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And Ildiko, we'll get to you next. Can you talk about the definition of work-life balance?
Well, thank you. So for me, the definition of work-life balance is that you eliminate everything from your life that you don't have passion about. And you spend so much time at work, and then you have to make sure that you are really thoroughly enjoy that and you also have passion about that. And there are maybe 3 major points that I would like to make about that. The number one is that you also have to create a so-called unicorn space. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Eve Rodsky's book called Fair Play. she's talking about the unicorn space, which is basically space that you are creating for yourself. Something that you have a me time, a creative time, whatever brings you joy. The second point is that you have two kinds of people in your life, in your work life and in your personal life. They either people who lift you up, who help you to the point of the previous talk about networking, help you with your network as well. They love you, they care about you. Those are the lilies in your life. And there are a bunch of people who are just pulling you down. Those are the leeches. So you have to manage the balance of the lilies and the leeches in your life to make sure that the balance is always going towards the lilies. And the last point is to do everything you can do to declutter your life. And for that, the only one of the best books I actually have read on this subject when you are still working is David Allen's book, Get Things Done. And this has a lot of very practical advice how you can actually create a decluttered headspace in your life, which is going to help you to enjoy, the other aspects of life, which is not work.
Oh, wonderful recommendations. Thank you. And Courtney, we'll end with you on this question.
Sure. So I've never heard of it referred to as the unicorn space. I might have to adopt that, but I think of work-life balance in three pieces. So obviously when you have a scale, you have two sides and you usually have a fulcrum right in between. So for me, the fulcrum, that unicorn space, is ensuring that I am making space for myself and I'm doing the things that are helping me take care of me. Because if I can't take care of me, I can't take care of anybody else. And I had an epiphany 2-3 years ago when everybody always says, oh, I'm going to take care of myself for my kids and I want to show up for my family. You know what? No, I'm going to take care of myself for me, because I can't help anybody if I'm not taking care of me. So you have to, that centerpiece has to be making sure that you are in a good place. And then the other two sides are being amazingly phenomenal at your job and showing up for your team and leading people and achieving goals. And that other side is being a phenomenal, if you're a parent, showing up every day for your kids, showing up for your spouse, showing up for your friends, your family. And I have actually had a lot of people ask me in the last couple of years, how do you balance the two? You don't. There is no such thing as balance. For me, some of the time, I am just rocking it at work and I'm on fire and I am hitting goals and I am making things happen. And when I'm doing that, I feel like, I'm not showing up as the best parent right now. I'm not being the best spouse. I'm not getting everything done at the house that needs to be done. But then it tips the other way too, where I have these moments where I go, oh, it was great. I, took my daughter to Disneyland. It was just the two of us. We had a phenomenal day and I didn't do everything that needed to be done that day at work. So you're going to have ups and downs and things are going to give on either side. And where you find balance is noting that you spend as much time here as you spend here. Because if you sit here like this, you're kind of mediocre in all spaces. So for me, it's about balancing the swings in where I'm able to focus my energy and attention while making sure that that fulcrum in the middle remains solid. So I know there's time for me every day. It's at 4 o'clock in the morning, but it's mine and nobody can take it. So you just have to find a way to work things into your life and know that it's gonna be okay if you feel like, I really didn't do great at work today, but I was amazing with my kids. And when you're like, I can't believe I kind of snapped because I had this other thing going on, you give yourself grace and you go into the next day.
Well said. Thank you. So Lisa, we're going to direct our next question to you. Lisa, what are the signs for you personally that you're becoming unbalanced? And how do you react to these warning signs and how do you recalibrate?
Yeah, so it's something that I really spent a lot of time focusing on, especially when we got into the COVID pandemic and it was just really intense at work. And so I would just kind of self-monitor. And I also spoke with some friends of mine at work, colleagues, to help me see things maybe I wasn't seeing. So maybe I was being a little short, or maybe I was not focusing. You know, my home life is pretty easy and peaceful. So it was really more the balancing of everything that was going on at work. And then I would, to rebalance, I use mindful breathing. I don't know if any of you practice that, but it's 5 breaths, 5 times. You do 5, breathe in for 5, a count of 5, hold it for a count of 5, release for a count of 5. You do that 5 times. It's also good for the cardiovascular. It really helped me to refocus and prioritize. A lot of times things are coming in so fast, kind of to Courtney's point of, you know, you're rocking it at work, but I don't know, is that also a potential burnout? You know, people can only sustain for so long. And so making sure I was, you know, really paying attention to how I was feeling, you know, what I was thinking. Was I able to stay on task, on target, or was I getting lost in my focusing? So those were things that were important for me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So, Beth, we're going to start with you on our next question and follow up with you, Grace. Beth, how have you been able to advance in your career without feeling as though you're sacrificing family roles, personal fulfillment, or mental health? Have there been crisis times when you couldn't do everything you needed to do, and how did you handle that?
It's a great question. When you say crisis, it's how do you define it? I would say there's a crisis all the time, and it just depends how you deal with it. Because I think crisis is the ability to cope with, you know, the day starts, you think it's going to go this way, and it doesn't. When my kids were little, you could call a crisis when you get the school call that the kids have lice. So you're zipping home, you're going to the laundromat, you're washing 100 blankets and all of that. You can have a crisis at work, which will divert your time at home. And I'm giving you a 4-decade view, but I think I really appreciate what Courtney said. I've always used the words work-life integration. And the reason I use that is I've never been able to partition my focus on one thing versus the other. So the way I've always dealt with it in the last 40 years, and now it's hubby and 2 dogs. So it's not like I have all of the interruptions I used to have when I was raising our kids. But I felt if I called it integration, it gave me the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to do this for 30 minutes, then I got to go deal with that for 30 minutes. And when I was in industry, it would be like I knew when my kids were going to come home and when they had tests and everything else. So I dealt with that. And then the next 30 minutes, I was all on in work. So it may be viewed as balance, but I've always viewed it as integration. So that's one point. The other point is you can't do it all. You cannot, depending on how you define it. Even Marie Kondo said she can't do it all anymore with her 3rd kid, right? She said, you know, her perfection is no longer there, which was very comforting to a lot of my colleagues. And I think what you have to decide is what's most important for you to be actively engaged in. So when I was raising my kids, and I would say up until the pandemic, to be honest with you, my husband never was waiting for, Molly Maid to bring dinner every night to him. So that was a good training mechanism I did long ago. But I said, okay, do I spend time on cooking and feeding, or do I outsource that and get takeout and make sure my kids are clean every night? So do I help them with the homework and type papers? Or do I worry about this? So I would say that the second point of my comment is just know you can't do it all and be okay with that. So find out what's most important to you that you are engaged in, and give the time to that, and don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid that something is not being done as well as you think, because my guess is everybody's your 80% giving it is probably most people's 100%.
Yes, well said. And Grace, we'll follow up with you on the same question.
Yeah, for me, I had a fairly non-traditional career path, I think, for my age, for the country that I've been. Yeah, I'm from the Philippines, where it's a little bit still untraditional, I guess, for the woman in the family to kind of like go the places I went for go for the jobs that I typically, like men would be more daring to kind of go to China or go to, to the UK and relocate, have a kid and start a new life in each country that I've been in, and still be the person, kind of like my husband has been, so bless him, he's been the following spouse or the trailing spouse. So with his own problems of getting there, but he was really very supportive in the path that I took for my career. And, going through that, I know that every time that I would make that big decision to move, the biggest advice that I would have from my mentors would always be, Grace, don't go for a move that will have, like maximum have it 2 changes. It should be like, either in the same industry, same function, same company, or, like same job, like kind of like thing, and the same country. But in all of the moves that I made, it was always more than 3, and add to that, I would move country. I had a baby, it's a big change. And what I think really helped me and making those transitions and still going forward is I would always evaluate every career move as in the context of fit, and fit is a mnemonic that I use and I tell people as well. It's about the franchise or, what you're going after, which is F. Maybe it should be fit, but anyway, F sounds better. So it's a franchise. What is it that you're kind of like trying to do? And whether that is the same, the company that you're working for, the brand that you're working on, or the mission or purpose in your life that you're kind of like going after. Then I, for me, is that your individual state, what you want for yourself, as Courtney and Beth have talked about, is like, what is it that I want for myself in this new career and new step that I'm doing. And then the last one is also what everybody talked about, which is you never move and progress in your career alone. So you need to have the team. And for me, the team is very important. And that's whether it's the team at work or the team in your house, in your home, people that are around you. And I think in my career, I've been able to make those decisions and those moves by having those 3 kind of like solidly standing like a tripod, keeping me up. But there have been crises. And one crisis that I had was when we were about to move from Switzerland to here in the US. And I had already made my fit and it was, all set. They were packing up our house in Switzerland. And then my mother passed away in the Philippines. And so, so first she had an unsuspected, unpredicted aneurysm. So I had to go in the middle of packing, go home. Then I went back to Geneva to pack up because I thought she was going to recover after the procedure. But she died. So we kind of like had to go back. And so I was really shaken and saying, okay, what do I do now? What do I, do I move? Do I not move to the US? And so I guess as Courtney and Beth and everyone here has said, at a certain point, there is, you just have to keep the balls up above. And when they do fall, what's important is there's that fulcrum that kind of like holds you up. And I still feel like those 3 pillars are kept me up. that's how I handled those. And
Thank you for sharing that. So as we move along to our next question, Aldiko, we'll start with you, and then Lisa, go to you next on the same question. Do you think a remote work life allows for more work-life balance, or do you think it leads to issues with boundaries? If you have been working from home or leading remote teams, where do you see the benefits or the dangers?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I would say that one of the things that we absolutely have to be careful about is about working from home, that it shouldn't become living at work. When you completely eliminate all the boundaries, on both ends of the day, and you are constantly living together with your computer and your phone and your watch and whatever, that is a big danger, and it certainly is going to work against your work-life balance. So it is absolutely important to create those boundaries. And actually, the pandemic helped a little bit with all of us, right? Because there were so many, everybody had to work from home who could do that. And they gave us a roadmap. How is it possible to do it well? So a couple of practical advice is to get dressed for work. You will have a different feel about your work, what you have to do during the day, even from your home office, if you are going to dress for the part, right? And you are not sitting there just in your sweats and things like that. I usually always dressed every day. I always wore my fuzzy slippers. I mean, that was comfort under the table. Create a separate space for your work if you can. In your house. It could be just a corner or a part of a room or a room, whatever is possible for you. Create regular working hours and make a contract with yourself that these are the hours that I am going to work, and try not to violate that contract with yourself. Take frequent breaks. They always advise that. Try to have a desk which is like a sit to stand desk if you can do that, or just move your computer to a higher piece of furniture that part of the day you can actually stand and don't have to sit all the time. You should stretch and build in some recovery time, every 45 minutes, have some coffee breaks, have a lunch break, have a brisk walk. Have a brisk workout if you can. You can put a stepper or a treadmill under your desk and work on that. Just try to actually avoid to get any physical issues by sitting at your same desk for 8, 10, or maybe more hours a day. So that this would be my practical advice to make sure that you have a boundary and curtail the hours that you work.
Oh, thank you for that. And Lisa, we'll go to you next on the same question.
I have some pretty strong thoughts about teams that work from home. Coming from Sharp Healthcare, working from home, remote work was actually new for the organization, new for a healthcare organization, well, for Sharp specifically when the pandemic hit. So I think it really depends on the organization, the business, and the business needs, and does it support a remote workforce? I think it can be highly successful. An example is my daughter works from home. She actually works 2 jobs. She has young boys. She's an incredible multitasker, and she's able to do it very well. And I've observed her interactions, and other people sometimes struggle with working from home. And I think the human connection that you miss with a remote workforce can be challenging. Mid to low level workers, I think it's very difficult and challenging to manage them and help them to maybe be successful in what you might need them to do. I do think it blurs the lines, and as you stated so eloquently, you don't want to be connected all the time, 24/7. And I do see that happens sometimes with people who are working remote. They're, oh, I work from 6 to 10 and then I take a break and then I work again from, 11 to 4 and then I take a break and then I work from 9 to 11. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's a lot of hours you're working. Where's your balance? And it's interesting as the world, United States has become more of a remote workforce. And as we move forward, I don't know that there were good and clear guidelines going forward into a rapid remote workforce. So I think there's work to do to get to that true balance, and appreciate that there are people who can be highly successful working from home, and some people, I would not be one of those people. I'm too easily distracted. I want to go walk my dog. I do better in a work environment. Maybe it's my generation. I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
Wonderful thoughts. Thank you for that. And Courtney, we'll go to you on the same question and follow up with you, Beth. Courtney, can you talk about some of those boundaries?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting for yourself. If you're speaking personally, you do have to set boundaries. And honestly, I was a compulsive workaholic until the pandemic happened. I mean, I was, every minute that I wasn't looking at my kid, I was looking at my computer, and I didn't care. And then the pandemic happened, and I was home with both my husband and I in leadership roles I had a 3-month-old and a 3-year-old, and they're both home and we're both home, and we're trying to manage and lead people who are now all at home and not used to being at home. And that was actually a light bulb moment for me. I went, I've got to figure out how to separate this. I don't need to do this all the time. I need to do this. Like, I need to watch my kids grow up. I need to see the milestones. It's actually not a lot of people. I am thankful for COVID. I saw more of my younger daughter's life than I ever would have seen. My older daughter, I missed the first 3 years. That girl was in daycare 11 hours a day. I missed it. I don't get that back. So I actually, when I talk to the teams that I lead that are in that stage of life and they're having babies and they're getting married, I'm like, don't miss it. I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm kind of I only want to take the 3 months off. I'm like, take whatever time you can take, because you don't get that back. And if you leave, I love you. I will replace you. You don't get that. I do. I will support you, and wherever you want to go, and I'll be your biggest champion, but I'm going to replace you because I need somebody to do what you do. But for me, I have managed nothing but remote teams for the last 3 years. And being at home has allowed me to actually be better at everything. And again, I don't know if it's that trigger that flipped in my head at the beginning of the pandemic, because I've become a more empathetic leader. I have become more understanding. I've also become more supportive and actually more available. I am more available to the teams that I lead because I'm at home, because I'm not getting sucked into every little pickup meeting and, oh, here, hey, let's go. I schedule my day. I make time for my team so that they're remote, but if they want to, they can see my face every day. I have office hours every day on the calendar. They're on everybody on my team. It's on their calendar. They know that if they just want to say hi or they have an issue that needs to be worked on, I don't schedule over that time. I'm there. I'm available. And I'll sit and wait. I'll usually kind of multitask and do other things, but they know that they can find me, and I will be there from 3 to 4 every day. And if you're one of my East Coasters, at a half an hour in the morning, a couple days a week for you. So for me, I think being home has made me more successful, but I think that the teams that I lead also are able to see that because I model that. That's the important thing. When people say it's hard to lead remote teams, you have to model for your team what to expect. And I know I saw a question in there about how do you succeed in the companies where hours are rewarded as effort instead of results. And I don't know that there's a way to combat and get around that other than find yourself a leader that recognizes the difference. Because for me, If you're getting your job done and you're hitting your metrics and you're figuring out how to get it done in 7 hours and not 10, I'm going to applaud you and I'm going to ask you to teach your coworkers how you're doing it. Because being home is a privilege. Being able to get your job done and do other things is also a privilege. And I think that that privilege should be rewarded. And I had a leader that I worked for when we first went remote before I moved out to California, where she thought everybody had to be in the office. And I put together a 5-slide deck on how much more productive my team had been at home versus when they were in the office. Because you can figure out how to balance your life and you can work those things in. But a big part of it when you're working remote is having a leader that supports you in being able to have that lifestyle and also models when to shut it off. I have an app on my phone called Opal, and I have calendars scheduled into it. So during the day, all of my social media shuts down. I cannot get into Facebook. I cannot get into Instagram. There's nothing. I can get into anything that pertains to my kids, and I can get into, normal communications. I can't get into any of it so that I can focus on what I need to do when I'm here. But at the same time, at 7 p.m., I can no longer get into my work email. My husband appreciates that I can't get into Amazon. But those are the things that you have to do in order to make it work. And I think you can be insanely successful if you use tools to help you do it. Like Beth, I love what you said about like, do I help the kids with their homework or do I make dinner? You order dinner.
Outsource.
You order dinner. You don't want to outsource the time with your kids, even if it's hard. I mean, I don't understand new math, but I'm going to get there. But you know what I mean? Like that's, you pick your priorities and you figure out where you can outsource and you figure out where you can supplement. Could I build a wall bed? Yes. Am I going to? No, I'm going to go buy it. These are the choices that you make. So there, that's my spiel on working from home, because I think it's very successful as long as you have somebody that's supportive of you in it.
Yeah, well said. And Beth, we'll end with you on this question. Any final thoughts on that, on those boundaries?
It's really fascinating to hear I'll call you colleagues, because I'm going to sound like Lisa, maybe with generational differences. I mean, if I was to tell you, Courtney, that we had to go to an office because the only way you had to answer the phone and get while you were out slips. And there was no email. And we walked uphill both ways. We didn't have a choice but having to show up. So, just to add to what you were saying, you have to understand my environment. I am client driven. And most of my panelists here, my co-panelists, are clients of my firm. Not me personally, but I sit in our healthcare practice and I'm looking around the room and I'm like, wow, how did I get with such a bunch of healthcare people here? and clients control your calendar. You don't always have the choice. I don't have the choice always of saying, if when I'm working from home, that at 10 a.m., I'm going to block my calendar, which I try to do on Fridays, because I want to go to level 2.5 Pilates. And just disappear for an hour. But invariably, blue doesn't work on my calendar, with others being respectful of that. I'm thinking purple out of office may work better. So we have come to I've noticed generationally, and we're multi-generational, I'm at the tail end, that our young people all want to gather and have community. They don't necessarily want to do it every day, but they do want to gather. The senior folks like myself, the senior partners and all of those that have grown kids, want to travel and get together and go to dinner and do all that. And then there's a whole middle group, Courtney, just like you, that if they can sit on the sofa and do all that and, so I have to continually adapt to what would Beth do versus what's good for my team. So my teams are all over the country. We have a gather with purpose kind of a motto, which means you don't have to come together all the time, but there are times that we feel we need to co-locate because we are a national practice, right? So we will say, we're going to co-locate in Dallas this week. And then everybody plans for it. We come together. We may do training. We go to dinners. We talk to each other because in our firm, the only way, because your teams keep changing depending on the projects you're working on. So you need to be able to model behavior. And there is so much gathered when you're all able to sit in one room. I always call us, we're pack animals. Consultants are pack animals. If all of you have hired us, you know how we are. We come in with the 22-inch suitcases and you give us a conference room and we're happy people. And there are a lot of things that my 24-year-olds learn from just listening to me be on 9 hours of phone calls while I'm in this team room. So we have to, from a remote work life, I think the pandemic did a wonderful thing and proved, along with a lot of my clients who are questioning the same thing, that it can be done. But I think everything is in moderation. And I think as a senior person, I have to be very respectful, engage with each of my teams, or people, or mentees, or coaches, whatever you want to call it. What works for them, and trying to find balance with them, because I could fly 50 weeks a year and I'm probably okay. I'm doing this webinar from Chicago. So just to give you an idea. So I think it is, what I've noticed is it is a challenge for every organization I talk to. So it's really finding that balance. But also, I think there are some things that you can't do on Zoom. You can't ideate. I need a whiteboard. Maybe I'm old school, but I need a whiteboard. I need to draw pictures. People need to be in a room. We need to, because when you're on Zoom, you could be distracted, looking at your phone, doing this, go off camera, talk to your husband. So it's long-winded what I just said, but hopefully there were a few good nuggets that came out of that.
No, I absolutely get where you're coming from on that too. And I know that not everybody sits the way that I do when I look at how I manage a remote team.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I like the co-locate language that you use, especially since you have folks all over the US. I do also strongly believe that it's nice to physically see people every now and then.
Right.
But what I've found is that when you try to get those people together, they're less likely to want to come in because you say, we're going to have a meeting. So what I do instead is I say, we're going to take this meeting at the beach, and then we're all going to go for a walk afterwards. So I try to find things like that so that everybody still gets to have that human connection.
Oh, yeah.
And it is still a beautiful thing. I remember the first time I took my script team to the beach, I walked about half a football field behind them. And it was just the most beautiful thing ever. They were in their little groups and they were talking and they were laughing and they were chatting, and you're just like, yes, this is good. And to be fair, I have 1 foot as a millennial and 1 foot as a Gen Xer, and I'm usually very conflicted.
You're the Oregon Trail. You're the Oregon Trail
I am
generation.
Oregon Trail.
You're the Oregon.
Look
Look it up, everyone. It does exist because my daughter was born in 81. So yes,
Exactly.
I
Born
do
in
know.
81.
Yep, I know about the Oregon Trail. Yes.
Yeah,
So
amazing.
yeah, it is, I work with controllers from all over the country, and they're all trying to find that hybrid environment of what works and having that sensitivity. Some of them have put in Starbucks machines. Some of them are having lunch every time they come in, because I think everybody recognizes in the remote work environment that there is value to coming together. You don't need to come together all the time. And certainly technology has enabled that, because, going back to my old while you were out slips, which I think Lisa was nodding her head. So I know she knows what I'm talking about.
I used to get those too. They were cute. They were little notes. You got the little.
I know, but
them.
when I was raising my kids, I was like a maniac on the 5, trying to pick up my kids from daycare at 6. And if not, I had extended daycare and before daycare. And because of technology and Zoom and remote and computers like laptops, you don't need to be that anymore. So I'm happy to see that our very powerful women, smart, are able to really advance in their careers, because I don't think that option was as easy 30 years ago.
Oh, thank you, ladies. Well, Lisa, we're going to start with you on the next question, and Ildiko follow up with you. Lisa, can you talk about how big of a role does delegation play in your ability to balance home life and work life?
Well, I think it's a very important role, and I think as a leader, it's critical to success of myself and my teams. With that delegation, though, it's also having the responsibility to having that conversation with who you're delegating to make sure they have the bandwidth to pick it up. Because as a leader, I always felt it was not only my responsibility to be successful, but to ensure their success. So if I'm delegating and they don't have the bandwidth to really carry it through with success, that's not going to work. So it's a much bigger conversation than just delegating. Home delegating, this isn't specific to this question, but in my perception, women still do so much in the home. That delegation, I mean, it's a societal situation, and men, it would be nice if they just pick the ball up a little bit more often without having to be asked. And again, I'll reflect on my daughter and son-in-law, who I adore to the moon and back. But my goodness, come on, you're home, go pick up the boys from school. Don't wait for your wife to do it. Don't wait to be asked to do it. It's really interesting, especially as I'm in a different place in my life and not having to have those challenges anymore, to watch and just really like, gosh, how can we change this? But in the workforce, for sure, it's having those deep conversations with, my management team, my leadership team, and making sure they have the capacity to take it on and prioritize.
Oh, well said. And Ildiko, we'll follow up with you on the same question. Can you talk about delegation?
Yeah, so I think it's really like working smarter, but not harder, basically, right? So you can delegate a lot of things at work, and then it usually comes easier, right? Because you know what you are doing and how you can share that. But it's sometimes harder to do it at home. And you can really broaden, your thought about what you can delegate. You can delegate a lot of things. You can have dry cleaners actually pick up dry cleaning from your house and bring it back home, and it doesn't cost extra money. You certainly can utilize, Amazon and all the other .com companies to deliver things for you. You can deliver food. You can create a co-op with your friends, right? You could share the cooking responsibilities and distribute it amongst people. Maybe if you have a few neighbors like that, you can share children pick up responsibilities, et cetera, et cetera. So you just have to sit in your unicorn space and create the time when you can brainstorm about it with either by yourself or with your partner or your spouse or with friends, and come up with ideas how you can delegate at the time. But I would like to follow up also on something that Lisa said about the partners in your life. And if you permit me, I would like to read this paragraph from Eve Rodsky's book, The Fair Play, which I really very highly recommend to everyone, because there are so many nuggets in this book that anybody can find, regardless what is their life situation. And so it says about all the time is created equal, is required for you and your partner to benefit from the true life and relationship changing experience of fair play. It asks you both to reframe how you value time, and then commit to the goal of rebalancing the hours that domestic work requires between two partners. Before you ask your partner to reimagine the value of time, take a moment to fully buy into yourself. To do this, answer the following question. Are the 2 hours my husband spends on a work conference call more valuable than the 2 hours I spent holding my child's hand at the doctor? In other words, is time-consuming support given to my family's to-do list off-screen equal to the time-consuming activity of paid work on-screen? What is your answer? And how would your partner respond? The reality is that the heavy lifting in the home will continue to fall on you, the she-fault partner parent, until you both recognize that time is a limited commodity. It is a finite resource. You are both diamonds. You both only have 24 hours in a day. Only when you believe that your time should be measured equally will be the division of labor shift toward party into your relationship.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So, ladies, I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. So for our first question, Courtney, we'll direct this question to you. Courtney, how do you adapt to sudden crises at work, at home, or even worse, both at once?
Beth, I found it hilarious that you referenced the phone call about the kids having lice. Because I had that in January, the day that a really big presentation was due. And I do work from home. I am the one who's a mile from the school. And, you know, I think what you have to do at that point is assess the situation. Clearly, neither of which are you going to be able to get out of. You have to figure out exactly how you're going to take care of this problem while still managing over here. So the first thing I did, I have a manager, or had, because my previous organization had a manager that worked with me that I had kind of gotten up to speed on this presentation that I was giving. Called him. I said, listen, I need you to jump into my slide deck. I want you to start reviewing it. I'm going to go pick up the kids. When I get back, I'm going to answer any questions that you have in case I can't get to the call. Got him up to speed. Think of your resources quickly. I go pick up the kids. What do? I go, okay, who do I know that's not working right now? My best friend. Best friend, I love you and I know that you love me. Is there any way you will take my children to the delousing place? Because they exist, actually. A very quick Google. You can take them somewhere and they will clean your hair out and get it all done. So it's quickly thinking of your resources and then knowing that you can lean on them. And part of that is talking about building those relationships of like your core people. Who are your people? And if you are lucky enough to have 2 or 3 of those, you're golden. But you kind of have to go into management mode and go, okay, what's the top priority? What's next? Who can help me with this? What do I need to do to make sure that they're successful? Okay, go. So bless my friend. She came, she picked up my kids. I made it to my presentation. We got it all taken care of. Just a very recent example, but I got to tell you, those first 4 or 5 months of the pandemic, it was this example every single day. It just turned into, okay, division of responsibilities. My husband and I every morning divided out our calendars. What do you have that is incredibly important? I can't miss this meeting. I'm going to be upstairs in the closet with both doors locked so the kids can't find me. And you're going to be outside of the house with them, right? Okay. You just have to think through all of the possibilities and come up with a plan and just know that something's going to break in the plan. Eventually, one of the kids found me. The hiding place worked for about 3 weeks and then it was over from there. But, you know, look at the things you have available to you and don't go, oh my God, I can't do any of it. Because if you do that, you're A, wasting the time that you could be planning. And B, you're just making all of your nerves and your senses just go nuts and you're not going to be able to recover. So think of it as being in an emergency room and triaging.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. So I think for our final question, Grace, so we're going to start with you on this question and Beth follow up with you. So Grace, do you find that hobbies, family activities, or volunteering enrich your work life or vice versa? So how do your work life and your home life enrich each other?
Very much so. I think especially in times when one of them breaks down, you find very quickly how you're so grateful that the other parts are and running. And that happened to me fairly recently, actually. I was really, when I left HP in May of last year, it was a pandemic, I'm sure, but it was also just an inner angst of, I want to be better. And, I'm 52, my birthday's in May as well. So I was like, I'm 52, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And, I don't want to be fighting for their agenda, all the time, and, like defending what I do as meaningful and making it, so I had all of these thoughts in my head. So, and the environment that I was in that, was quite, people would describe it as toxic. And I had said, is this really what I want to do every day? And I could, because I'm pretty strong that way, but I was, spending more time doing that versus spending time touching base with my kids who were kind of like also moving away from the home. I had a kid in college and then a kid in just finished college. So I was like, in this space where, how do I keep this all up and not fall apart? And I think the one realization as I was talking through my exit from HP and living with the consequences of leaving quite a, generously very well-paying job to not being sure, what am I going to do next? And, it was very unsettling. I was definitely out of balance at that point in time. But the next morning, I distinctly remember, having a conversation with my son and then having my husband there. And, it was just so random that I realized actually I am so grateful to have them around me, at that point in time. And I'm so grateful that morning I had nothing really to worry about, not even a new job or not knowing what I would do on that day or that week or that month. I just had them. And then they said, oh, what movie should we watch tonight? And I think it gives you a little bit of a boost in terms of understanding really what matters that maybe you took for granted because you were so focused on, what's my work day. I spend 8 hours, 14 hours for the last 20, 30 years, focusing my whole days, on work. And, here are really important people in my life who, I don't know, it was just a different kind of, replenishment, I think, of the soul and the fire that you still have that would take you for the rest of your, I guess, life. So pretty dramatic, but I do feel that, moments, especially of crisis, it's really good to summon or pull from the other parts. And that's why the network is important, the time alone, the time for yourself, the knowledge of the people who are, surrounding you is really important.
Well, thank you so much. Well, Beth, I think we'll give you the final word of our panel for this afternoon. Can you talk about some of those hobbies or family activities that enrich your work life?
Yeah, that's an easy one because I always try to find time for those these days. So, you all know I have grown kids, but I have 2 furry babies that I think are treated better than my kids ever were. My dogs, my rescue dogs. So my husband's retired. So he has been for 4 years, and he was also healthcare. So I do a lot of different things. I wish I could say I was a reader, but I'm not because I have like ADD, I have professional ADD, and I can never get through it, but I can get through magazines. So I do Pilates. I think I mentioned that. I integrate that. I have Peloton bike and tread. I can't tell you how many conference calls I've done pedaling on the bike with the computer on the handlebars. So there's a matter of doing both at the same time. Walk the dogs. Can't tell you how many conference calls I've done while I'm dog walking. And I've learned to mask it. I'll say, let me be transparent. You may hear some noise. I'll be back at my home office in 10 minutes. I never let them know I'm picking up dog stuff or whatever. Even when I'm on airplanes, which I am a lot, I love binge watching TV shows or series or whatever, you name it. I could recommend whatever. So even if I'm working on an airplane, I've got my iPad going with something. And I find if I don't integrate all of that I just mentioned, whether it be the Peloton or walking, the dogs or binge watching, I get very cranky and I go to the dark side really fast, and it's not pretty. You know, I can get off a conference call and like wanting to jump out of my skin. And sometimes I'll just go on the treadmill for 15, 20 minutes just to cool my jets a little bit. So I guess the final word on that is don't do anything. Nothing is all. Don't make everything all. Integrate what you can. And I don't think, the humans were meant to sit for 10 hours a day and looking at a screen. I think we were meant to get up and down. I don't think our work culture has ever been oriented that way because we were in an in-office culture. But now that we're in this, kind of choose your own adventure culture, I would say, in my generation, we have to get oriented that it's okay to play hooky. I don't know any other way to say it. I'm in Chicago, I'm here tomorrow, and I'm playing hooky tomorrow morning by taking a niece to the museum with her kids. So, but I feel like, okay, how am I masking that to my work life? Well, I'm going to do a conference call before and after and make it work. So I guess my parting words were feel free to play hooky.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for all your time this afternoon.
Hey, my friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to rate, review, and share your biggest takeaway. And if you're wanting more, you can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. You can also get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or networking group near you. Or if you just need to access your membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Because here at Women Leaders Association, we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. That's all for today, my friends. Bye for now.